Okay. I think all of 2 or maybe 3 people asked to see this video.
That many?
So now we're finally going to deliver. Yeah, I know, that many. So, if you could...
names?
Huh?
Yeah.
I probably should have looked that up. Yeah, so if you couldn't tell from the title of the video, we're all going to talk about how we all went vegan as a family. And I'm going to go first since we're going to do it in chronological order. And I was the trendsetter of the family. So I guess I'll probably start like before we went vegan, because pretty much our whole lives, like, we were pretty healthy. Like, we followed like the standard American diet, but like a healthier version. Like, I was talking to my parents earlier today, and like I could remember on like maybe 1 or 2 hands, like every single time that we went to a fast food restaurant. It was like probably less than 10 times that we ever went to a fast food restaurant as a family, and I think we only went out to eat like once, maybe twice a year. And it's always seemed like weird to me that like people would go out like once every Friday or something, like to a restaurant. Like it seems weird because like we always like, you know, cooked food at home.
Drone food, yeah.
Even though it was like now by our standards would be pretty unhealthy. And now we not only follow a vegan diet, but like a healthy vegan diet, which is not something you'd expect from candy makers, you know. So we're pretty healthy our whole lives, and we've been into like running. We're pretty much all like a family of runners, although Dad lifts. He's the exception.
Exercise bike.
Yeah, he uses the bike. And Mom she runs, well, you run when it's not
It's not candy
super busy,
season,
yeah.
so I run from April to October.
Hmm. And then do you do push-ups like every other day?
I do push-ups 3 times a week,
Times
and
a
crunches too.
And you've been doing that for like, what, 5 years or something?
Yeah, 5, 6 years.
Yeah.
I have to be able to carry big boxes of chocolate.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like our background, and then I was 19 years old, and I was getting ready for indoor track at Brockport, which is the college that I went to, I graduated from, and so I was getting ready for it, and all of a sudden I just started getting slower and slower, and like we couldn't figure out why, and we just started getting like weaker, and we went through like all of the usual things that runners would think about that they might have, like anemia or mono, or you know, maybe they have just I don't know, some other thing that would just like make you really tired. Yeah, we like tried everything, and like we couldn't figure out what it was, and I was like, you know what, maybe I'm just overtrained. So I just like took some more time off, and that wasn't the case because I came back even slower, and I basically just started getting like weaker and weaker and weaker, and we couldn't figure out what it was. And eventually I was misdiagnosed with a disease called Guillain-Barré syndrome. And I was told that it was like the most mild form my neurologist had ever seen. So I was like, well, that sounds great. I'd like to hold the record of having the most mild disease you'd ever seen. And I was told that I would get better without medication for, I don't know, within like a month or something like that. And I didn't. I kept getting worse and worse. And eventually I was on YouTube, which is why I'm actually so passionate about YouTube, is because it's changed my life in so many ways. I was on YouTube, and I was doing like some research about my disease, and I found out that I actually got a misdiagnosis, and instead of having Guillain-Barré syndrome, I actually had what's called chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, which is probably the hardest thing about that disease, is learning how to pronounce the name. I'd say that's probably the hardest part.
I had to write it down and repeat it many times.
Yeah, I've met people who have the disease that don't even remember what it's called. They call it like CIPD and CIDP. So yeah, so basically it's, if you're unfamiliar with CIDP, which most people are, I was, it's basically like MS of the peripheral nervous system, and you just keep getting like weaker and weaker and weaker until like eventually like I was in a wheelchair. But so yeah, I went from like running like 50-60 miles a week on a team like in college to not being able to stand up on my own, not being able to walk or anything. And yeah, so eventually I'm going all over the place. But yeah, so I found out that I actually had CIDP instead of GBS, and I emailed my neurologist, and like the next day he got me in, and he was like, yep, you actually have CIDP. So I like to say that I diagnosed myself. So I diagnosed myself, and then he told me that I'd be on a medication called IVIG for the rest of my life. And it's not a pill you can pop, if you can guess from IV. It's an IV drip that would last for like a couple hours, and you have to go in like once a month or so. And I didn't really want to do that. And it was also like $8,000 a treatment.
You were getting it once a week.
Yeah, I was getting it once a week at first, and then they spaced it out to like 2 weeks. And
it was
3
at
weeks.
the time it was $7,000 per treatment.
Yeah, once a week. So we met our insurance deductible pretty quick. But yeah, so I was diagnosed with that, and then once he said, like, it was pretty much like right when he said you're gonna be on it for the rest of your life, in my head I was just thinking, no, I don't think so. So right then I was like, I'm gonna get off this medication. I don't really care what he says. I'm gonna do it. So I was pretty sure it had something to do with diet, and we actually met with a local bodybuilder. He owns like his own gym. Really smart guy. His name is Jeremy Freeman. We met with him. He spent like an hour of just like his time for free, just talking to us about nutrition. So we kind of got like a baseline of like where to start. He gave us like told us about a bunch of supplements to take and stuff like that. So that's where we started, and eventually it kept evolving to different things. We kept doing a lot of research. We tried an anti-inflammatory diet, which was it was really confusing because it wasn't like concrete. It was just like a list of foods that I could eat and like a list of foods I couldn't eat. And I remember we went to...
We're going by pH and what
acid,
increases
alkaline,
acid load and what's alkaline.
Yeah, like stuff like that. And we went basically to like a health food store around here called Nature Time, and like we were buying like healthier versions of things and just like things that just didn't taste good. The things that tasted like cardboard, because you usually think that that's what healthy food is, cardboard. Make sure you get your cardboard today.
Tastes good, spit it out.
Yeah. So that's what we started with, and then eventually I went with like a version of like paleo, and that didn't really do anything. And then one day it was like during spring break of college. It was really exciting spring break. I was sitting at home watching YouTube, and I found a video of what a raw vegan eats in a day, or like a day in the life of a raw vegan. And at first I saw it and I was like, well, this girl is crazy. You won't get enough protein, you won't get enough calories doing any of this stuff.
Where do you get your protein?
Yeah, that was actually one of my first questions. So I try to be really patient and compassionate when people ask, where do you get your protein? Because I had to ask that question.
Was it fully raw Christina?
Yeah,
okay.
It was Christina. Well, the first video I watched was Megan Elizabeth. And then the second one that I watched after that was Christina Carrillo Bucaram, fully raw Christina's videos about what a raw vegan eats in a day. And I just started watching those videos and I was like, actually, this seems pretty cool. I think I'm going to try this. So that's what I tried. I went raw vegan, and it was actually really pretty easy. It sounds really hard, but I think the reason that it was so easy for me is because of my reason. Like, I wanted to... well, at that point, I had progressed to a wheelchair when I had IVIG, and then I was slowly getting better, but I was still on that medication. So that was my motivation to go vegan, especially raw vegan at the time, was I don't want to pay for this medication for the rest of my life, and I don't want to have I'm not a big fan of needles. I'm not a needle phobe.
Just the time, but driving out there, sitting in a chair for 2 hours with a needle in your arm.
Like, do you want to do that? No. I would rather just not eat animal products, but... So I started just eating like fruits and vegetables, and like I said, like it sounded like it would be really hard, but I really wanted to do it. And a big part that made it really easy was because I was thinking like, I can get off my medication if I do this, and if anybody is like stuck in a wheelchair and told they're going to be on medication for the rest of their life to not be in a wheelchair, just eating fruits and vegetables and not being in a wheelchair, like I feel like that would be a pretty good trade-off.
You would think.
Yeah.
For most people.
So that's why I was pretty motivated, because I was like, this seems like a lot easier. Like, I just got to eat watermelon for breakfast and then like peaches for lunch. Mom can interject when like this is like roughly when she went vegan. It was like a couple months after I went vegan.
Well, the reason I went vegan is I couldn't have the illness for my son, because I think any mother would want to do that. If she could take the illness away from her kid and have it herself, she would do that. I couldn't. But I could support him by exploring his diet, because he read the book by Dr. Douglas Graham, 80-10-10, which is basically a raw vegan diet. So I read the book, because I like to be interested in the things my kids are interested in. I read the book. Sounded kind of extreme, but I thought, I can try it. I mean, a lot of the science made sense, so I said, I'm going to give this a try. And then it was July when I was making this decision. Craig was going to the farmer's market a lot. And,
like every week.
Well, that Saturday he came home with peaches.
A couple flats
of peaches.
And they were local organic ones.
And that's just what he was going to be eating for his meals for a few days. I was like, these peaches are the best. And I've always thought of a peach, that's one peach, that's a serving to me, pre-vegan. And he was going to eat like 18 peaches for lunch. I'm like, well, I could probably put away 6 easily.
Yeah.
So then I thought, you know what? I'm watching what he's eating. It doesn't really look that hard. Maybe I'll try it. So I just decided to try being a raw vegan too. And I did that because it was summertime, so there's a lot of nice, easy produce readily available. So I tried that out. And I mean, I started out being like 98% vegan. I might have cheated a little bit here with cheese or meat at first. But I did mostly raw vegan. And then I kind of transitioned into, before it was even a thing, raw till 4.
Yeah, Mom was raw till 4 before raw till 4 was a thing.
Yeah.
And not because somebody told her to do it. She was just like, well, I like eating a lot of fruit, but I also like eating rice and beans.
Yes. So I was having, rice, beans, potatoes, pasta, veggie burgers. It wasn't that difficult, but I mainly did it to support my son so he could have food that was
in the fridge.
In the fridge, he could open the
This is my
fridge and
section.
have food that was for him too, not just for the rest of the family, so he wouldn't be excluded.
Do you remember at one point I had my own fridge?
Yes.
Like we had a shed out back, and like, cause I had like so much fruit. Like one time I came home with 10 watermelon from the farmer's market, and it was only like $20. They gave it to me for like $2 a watermelon, which was like the biggest steal I
Practically
probably
free.
ever had. So I came and I ate all 10 watermelon myself from the farmer's market. I ate that all within a week. So like I was going through all this fruit, and I was loving it. Like it wasn't like hard for me to be raw vegan, because the weird thing is, like, once you start eating only fruits and vegetables, like that's all you want. Like your taste buds change, and like you don't really want things that are very salty because you're not used to it anymore. Like even like you could eat a tomato and you could taste all the salt in it, and it's just your taste buds change, and like the more fruit you eat, the more fruit you want to eat. Is that all your vegan story?
Well, I transitioned to. I just found it easier to add cooked food into my diet. So once I did that, being vegan was a lot easier. And then just, then it started. I think I read the book My Beef with Meat by Rip Esselstyn, and it had some great recipes in it. It's like, oh, this is it, because I've always liked to cook.
Yeah.
So not cooking, because that summer I really didn't cook.
Yeah.
So, and your dad was used to me having part of the burden of cooking, and I wasn't cooking anymore, really. Just roasted fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
So suddenly your dad was grilling for himself and your twin sister, and you and I are eating raw fruits and vegetables. Yeah. But I've always liked to cook, so I got that cookbook. I was like, well, this is doable. So I just had to rethink the way I cook and get some new cookbooks and get rid of my old cookbooks. And once I did that and got a few cookbooks like Dr. John McDougall's The Starch Solution, that's not really a cookbook, that's more of a lifestyle book, but there's plenty of recipes in it. So once I changed over my way of thinking about cooking, that made it a lot easier. Then it just became a no-brainer.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think it was like the first winter after being raw vegan, I started realizing that like every time I went to the grocery store, like the fruit was getting more and more expensive, obviously because it's out of season. So, and also it was getting much more limited, so I could pretty much only get like apples, oranges, bananas, like some dates, and mangoes. And the mangoes were getting kind of expensive too. So like everything was getting more expensive, the quality was going down, and like the price, like I already said, it was getting more expensive and the price was going up, if you can believe that.
Wow.
I know.
There's a correlation there.
So it wasn't going to be a viable option. I probably could have if I really wanted to struggle, but I'm just not about that struggle life. So
rice is so much cheaper.
Yeah. So I started eating like rice and beans and pasta, and like I would just like cut up some potatoes and like eat them with ketchup. It was really basic because I was so used to eating just like what's called a mono meal, where you just eat like one fruit. Like I would just when I was raw vegan, I was eating like maybe 2 pounds of grapes for a meal, or like 1 watermelon, or like 18 peaches, like my mom said, or I'd eat like 13 oranges or something, or like a giant salad. I think I've.
He means giant.
Oh yeah, I should show you my salad bowl sometime. You could, if you hunt back through my really really old videos, you could definitely find it. But it's a really big salad bowl. But yeah, then I just started eating cooked food, and then we were all on the cooked food bandwagon. And then it was a lot easier for Mom to cook, because she was like, oh, now I'm cooking for more than just one person.
Now I can cook again. Well, because I was cooking good food, so everybody else would eat it, whether it was vegan or not vegan, it tasted good.
Yeah.
So now the rest of the family is willing to eat it.
Yeah. And then Dad went vegan along the way. You want to share your vegan story now, Dad?
Okay, well, we agreed to go along to have vegan food for you, so it'd be easier for you in the refrigerator to find your own food, find everybody food. And then I did it slowly though. Weekends I still ate pizza and
Like
stuff.
the frozen
like
ones from Aldi's.
Yeah.
We used to go through a lot of frozen pizza back in the day.
So Friday, Saturday, Sundays I'd eat what I want. All week I'd be vegan. And then finally took Friday away from me.
Who took Friday away from you?
I did.
Oh.
You took
And
Friday
then-
away from you.
And then finally, months later, I ended up taking a Saturday away from me, so I ended up being with 1 day a week I eat what I want. And over time, I got rid of the Sunday and just ate vegan all the time.
One day you said, I guess I won't put meat on the list anymore.
And same thing with like cheese too.
I guess they won't put cheese on the list anymore.
Eeyore.
Because I wasn't trying to be judgy or tell him what to do. He had to do this on his own. It had to be his decision. So whatever he put on the list, the grocery list, I'd buy.
Yeah, then it was his decision. I feel
Yeah.
like then you're more likely to stick to it too, like if it's your decision instead of like my wife's making me do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
How about your twin sister who's not in this video?
Oh yeah, she doesn't like being on camera, but she went vegan too, and she was vegetarian for a couple months. I just went like straight from meat eating to raw vegan.
I went from high protein.
Yeah,
I went
she was
from high
on the
protein.
Dukan diet.
Yes, which is the worst diet in the world. How to kill yourself, the Dukan diet.
Yeah. So yeah, she was doing a paper for her English class, and it was about like I think it was about the environment and what millennials are doing, something with like millennials and the environment, and then so she decided to write about how the environment is impacted by the livestock industry, and like a lot of millennials are going vegan. And she used Cowspiracy for a lot of her references and just like a lot of different peer-reviewed articles, and like so she had to do a lot of research about it, and then when she finally wrote the paper, she was like, well, I can't write this paper, and like after doing all this research, knowing all this stuff, I can't in good conscience continue eating all this stuff, even if it was just dairy. So she went vegetarian, and then a couple months later she just went vegan, because I mean it wouldn't be hard for her to go vegan, especially since like she lived in a house with 3 other vegans, you know. So she was at one point, I think she might have been the only one eating cheese, or I don't know if like dad was the last one.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and like for a while, if we made frozen pizza, it would be like dad and my sister would be like the only ones eating the frozen pizza, and then mom would make something that was vegan that we could eat.
Well, yeah, your dad was the last holdout, so he was actually being excluded.
Yeah.
Usually it's the other way around with vegans. They're the ones being excluded, but your dad was being excluded. Like,
Yeah.
if he was going to make hamburgers, he'd have to make them all, and then he'd have to be responsible for eating them all.
Yeah.
And that's too much. You don't really want to eat hamburger. Well, he didn't want to eat hamburger for every meal for the next 6 meals.
Yeah, usually it's like the vegan, it's like, okay, this is my food, but really in our house it's like the meat eaters, like, okay, this is my food. Well, now you know how we all went vegan as a family.
Okay, just took the turkey things out of the oven.
Turkey things?
When I said turkey things, I mean they're not really turkey.
That's why they look so turkey-like, right?
Turkey-less stuffed roast with gravy.
Oh, so I guess now would probably be a good time to tell everyone our dirty little secret.
To out us.